Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all of our panelists and to you, our audience this evening, for our Women on the MBA webinar. My name is Sophie Carey, and I'm Senior Manager here in MBA, managing the MBA in the Smurfit School, responsible for various MBA programs. And we have a full and exciting agenda for you this evening, and we hope to give you a greater understanding of our MBA programs and why you should apply to us. So before I introduce our agenda tonight, I'd like to firstly introduce you to Professor Geraldine Doyle, Associate Dean, UCD College of Business and Director of the Smurfit School, to say a few words. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Geraldine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie. And I'd like to echo your sentiments in welcoming all of our attendees here this evening. Thanks too to our panel members, who we shall introduce shortly, for their participation and giving so graciously of their time to be with us and you this evening. We look forward to hearing your shared experiences of your MBA journey and its benefits both personally and professionally. I would like to begin by sharing a little bit about gender equity initiatives at the UCD College of Business and specifically opportunities for incoming MBA students. Over the last several months, we have refocused our energy on enhancing initiatives that support gender equality on our MBA programs. So to ensure we are focused on our activities, we have identified 3 key areas that we understand are potential barriers to female participation. 1 is lack of flexibility, 2 is cost, and 3 is lack of confidence amongst some female applicants. We understand in this time-poor world the importance of flexibility and how juggling our careers and home life is a particular pinch point for many. We have just launched a new Modular Executive Mba program that suits those who are busy advancing their careers, are short on time therefore, and who may be entrepreneurs indeed running their own businesses while studying for their MBA program. Sophie will speak about the details of this modular flexible program later this evening. So to address the cost barrier, we have a range of scholarships that are available, including the Image Scholarship, and our current Image Scholar is on our panel this evening, so thank you for that. We also have a scholarship from the 30% Club, her.ie, and also the journal.ie. And in addition to these scholarships, we also have many further scholarships that might be available. And then further details of these will be described later by our admissions manager, Jess. So to address the lack of confidence issue, we are enhancing our tailored support for MBA students, including the launch of our enhanced mentorship and outreach programs with industry and corporate partners. In addition, we have 2 new student-led initiatives that have been launched recently. The first is an MBA student club entitled Gender Equity on the MBA, or Mba for short. And the role of Mba is to create a student conversation around gender diversity through speaker events and panel discussions for current students and indeed alumni. And the second initiative is both a student and alumni initiative entitled UCD Smurfit Women Inspiring More. And this has been formed to promote the continued strong trajectory of women for education, from education to industry, and also indeed to offer a safe space for issues surrounding gender equality to be discussed. And for the first time later this year, we are delighted to announce that the UCD College of Business will be applying for the Athena Swan Award, an organisation that recognises and celebrates good practices in higher education towards the advancement of gender equality, representation, progression and success for all. We are dedicated to taking the steps necessary to achieve gender parity, and we have ambitious plans aligned with our overarching strategy. So our goal to enhance gender balance on our MBA programs is to achieve 40% female representation over the next 5 years, this being our short-term goal, and thereafter we are striving to achieve parity of 50%. It's an exciting time to be at the UCD Smurfit School, and I hope to get to know you as we perhaps welcome you as part of our incoming MBA class. So it's now my great pleasure to hand back to Sophie, who will provide us with an overview of this evening's event and indeed our MBA offerings. Thank you, Sophie.
Great, thank you very much, Geraldine, and hopefully my screen share has worked there. So I'm just going to share my slides with you. So thank you. And before I talk you through this evening's agenda, I just want to say to the audience to encourage you to use our Q&A function on Zoom and send us your questions. My colleagues and I will be monitoring your questions, and we will do our best to answer as many of those as we can. And of course, we will also have some dedicated time at the end of this evening to answer your questions in an open forum as well. Alternatively, you can email mba@ucd.ie after the session today. Okay, so just on to our agenda next.
Excuse me, Sophie, just Danielle here. Before we move on, would you mind changing your display settings like we did earlier, just so the audience can see the main slide? Thank you.
Absolutely, sorry about that.
Thank you.
How does that look?
There we go, perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Adele. Okay, thank you. Okay, so on to our agenda this evening. So firstly, I'm going to give you an overview of our MBA programs and reasons why you should consider the Smurfit MBA. Then we're going to have an opportunity to hear from my colleague, Jessica Dowling, our MBA admissions manager, who will give you all the information you need on how to apply for an MBA and what scholarships opportunities are available to you also. Following this, Dr. Orla Byrne, who lectures on our MBA program on entrepreneurship, will host a panel discussion entitled Empowering Career Journeys, the Role of an MBA in Personal and Career Development. And our panelists will comprise of some current students who are studying with us at the moment and some of our MBA alumni. And I will let Orla do the introductions later on this evening. And then finally, I'll host a Q&A session, as I mentioned already, to help you answer some of your questions with my colleague Jessica and our panelists. And we anticipate we'll wrap up around 8:30 this evening. Okay, so on to my next slide. Why UCD Smurfit? Lots of reasons, I guess. You know, first of all, we have our dedicated campus in Blackrock. We have about 15,000 students, 26 specialized master's programs and executive education, in addition to our flagship MBA program. We also hold the triple crown of accreditation, so Mba, Equus and AACSB, and these are accrediting bodies from the UK, Europe and the US. And all top business schools are recognized in this way. So we're happy to be a part of that family and community. We have many global alliances and memberships, and one of those that I'd like to highlight to you is that we are the only Irish member of the Global Network for Advanced Management Schools, GNAM, and our students get opportunities to undertake online courses and to travel to different GNAM schools, one of the 32 schools globally, to undertake modules. So we very much have a very strong relationship with schools such as Yale and Berkeley. And as a student in UCD Smurfit, you have opportunity, as I said, to undertake those courses in addition to the curriculum here in Smurfit. So I think some very valuable opportunities, and we really are proud of our global relationships and our networks. And, you know, the final point to mention on this slide is that we're, of course, consistently ranked in the top 100 in the likes of The Economist and the FT, which gives lots of validation to the quality of our program. Okay, so just a slide really on why do the Smurfit MBA. I mean, obviously many reasons. First of all, we have evidence to show that doing an MBA really impacts positively on your career. And we do have many dedicated career supports. My colleague Jessica will speak a little bit more in terms of the detail around that later on. In terms of industry connections, we have lots of links to industry, lots of connections. We have a lot of guest speakers on our program. So we're very attuned to industry, to the needs of industry and to kind of what's happening currently. So that would be an important point to note. In terms of our alumni network, we are one of the longest, you know, the oldest MBAs in Europe. So we started delivering our MBA, I think it was back in 1964. So we have over 4,000 MBA alumni, and those alumni are all over the world, all over Ireland and all over different industries globally. So we're very, very proud of that network, and it's a very strong reason why people choose Smurfit, because of the strength of that network. I mentioned already very much our global focus through our partnerships and our linkages with other schools, you know, such as Yale, Berkeley, Fordham in the US as well, for example. And second last point there really is, I suppose, our faculty and how respected they are in their field. We have 100+ faculty and who are highly respected and, you know, very, I suppose, one of the largest and most prestigious faculty bases in the country. And, you know, in terms of research, we're very research focused, and our faculty, you know, are often receiving kind of lots of recognition for the good work they do. And, you know, just to give you some examples of that, Professor Geraldine Doyle became the second female president of the European Institute of Advanced Studies in Management. Professor Niamh Brennan, who teaches on our MBA, was honoured recently with becoming one of the first business academics to be admitted as a member of the Royal Irish Academy. So we're very proud of our faculty and the good work that they do. And then a final point there really is around the experiential learning nature of the MBA. So when you do an MBA, you're learning through case studies. You undertake a capstone project where you work with client companies on live consulting projects. You also can go and do a module called the International Consulting Project, where you work with client companies on, you know, projects, for example, last year based in Lisbon. And you bring real world experience to these projects. So really, really important part of the MBA. And of course, the group work is a key part of what we do as well. In terms of the 3 options for study, I'm not going to go into detail because I know Jessica will cover this, but just to briefly mention, we have our full-time MBA program, which is 1 year. And we have our Executive MBA program, which you can undertake over 2 years on a Monday and a Thursday evening. And finally, Professor Doyle mentioned our new Executive MBA Modular, which is again over 2 years, and that is typically on a Friday and a Saturday once a month. In terms of the Modular MBA and how that works, you know, we often get questions about time commitment and what is the time commitment for each module, what is the time commitment in general. So I just wanted to take this as an example, really. So for the Modular MBA, for example, you would have 15 core modules over 2 years. So a module equals essentially a subject such as, you know, negotiations or data analytics, for example. You have the option to take a week-long travel module, and you also will do a final capstone project over a number of weeks. You know, in terms of the time commitment for each module, I've mentioned already, you will study all day on a Friday and a Saturday. And in addition to that, you will have 4 hours introduction to each subject area and 4 hours online teaching. So for each module, 24 hours in total. The focus will be on continuous assessment, because you will be on campus approximately for 2 days a month with some additional days, and all of those details are on our website, smurfitschool.ie. So that's really kind of a brief outline of the Modular MBA. In terms of time commitment, obviously it is a new program, but outside of the teaching and the learning, we anticipate 8 to 12 hours additional study per week. And of course that will vary. And of course that's very dependent on, you know, if you're coming near to exams or, you know, how much group work you may have. So that's a kind of a guesstimate at this point. Okay, another thing I wanted to mention, which is a very exciting part of our MBA, is our leadership development program, which is outside of the core curriculum. And the leadership development program is integrated and complementary to the core curriculum. There's a focus on developing leadership skills, developing skills for effective leadership beyond the MBA in terms of the organization, in terms of managing a team, and of course, in terms of personally becoming a self-aware leader. Features of the leadership development program would include things like undertaking psychometric assessments, but also things like our MBA clubs that we have. We've run a hackathon this year where there's working with a client on a business problem. But you know, anything that really helps you enhance your leadership skills comes under the umbrella of the leadership development program. And on my own team in the MBA office, we do have a dedicated leadership development program manager. Okay, So in terms of MBA modules, just to give you a flavour, I've listed some of our modules here: competitive strategy, financial reporting, leadership and organizational behavior, for example. So you will know that an MBA is a general business management degree. So all of the, typically people would do an MBA because they may be a specialist and they want to broaden their skills. They may be an expert in marketing, for example, but they've never understood finance or HR, and they want to climb the career ladder. They want to broaden their skills, and they want a better understanding of different areas of business. So these are some good examples of kind of modules that you can undertake on our MBA. And this year we have 2 new modules: data analytics and digital transformation. When we undertook a review of our MBA, we kind of felt that there was a number of gaps, and these areas are very topical and very much in demand from our students. And you can see underneath there, I have stated again the importance of faculty who are our international experts, published in the most recognized journals, who regularly consult with leading global and local organizations and offer original thinking in the classroom. So our modules are underpinned by this extraordinary faculty research base. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of do a quick slide on our Capstone project, because I mentioned that already. So when you undertake the MBA, you will all do a final Capstone project. And this is just a slide from our full-time MBA class last year, and it shows you the breakdown of the kinds of projects you will be working on. So you can see about 25% of the class were working on startup type projects, 37.5% of the class on SME type projects, small to medium enterprise. And then also there are some larger corporate projects as well. So student groups partner with companies to execute a valuable business project for a client. So this is a real opportunity to apply research, analytical and problem solving skills in a real world environment. Of course, supported all the time with your academic advisor, by your academic advisor. And some of the logos there you will see are, some of the companies we've worked with in the past. So you do get fantastic experience undertaking the Capstone in your groups. And then the final point I wanted to make, I made it earlier, was really just the value of and the size of our alumni network. So you can see here that as a College of Business, we have over 98,000 alumni in 148 countries. Our MBA program has over 4,000 MBA alumni. We have 40 global alumni chapters, and our alumni network is very expansive. We focus on connecting, giving back, and expanding that network. And it's a key reason why people join our program. Okay, so that's my very brief overview. And as I mentioned, please do type in your questions and we'll keep an eye on those, and we hope to answer them at the end of the session. So I'd now like to introduce to you my colleague, Jessica Dowling, and Jessica is our MBA admissions manager. So for most of you, Jessica will be your first point of contact when applying to our MBA program. She's going to speak to you now about our admissions and process and scholarship opportunities. So thanks, and over to you, Jessica.
Thank you very much, Sophie, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. So I am just going to share some slides with you today. Just give me 1 second. So perfect, hopefully everyone can see that. So thank you again for joining us this evening. I'm just going to start by going through firstly our admissions process and what you need in order to apply to either the full-time MBA or either of our part-time options. So firstly, all applications are received online. So you apply through smurfitschool.ie. The basic entry criteria are the following. So you need a minimum of 3 years professional work experience. We do generally recommend that you might want to be a little bit further on your career. So for example, for the full-time MBA, the average is about 8 to 9 years work experience. And for the executive MBA, typically it's about 14 to 15 years work experience, but 3 is the minimum in order to consider it. We also do look for a university degree, an honours bachelor's level. If you don't have a university degree, you can still apply. I just recommend that you email me and we can set up a quick conversation about it, but that's absolutely no problem. And then you need your completed application form. So the completed application form will include 3 short essay questions, which asks you why you're applying to the programme and what you hope to achieve. 2 recommendation forms. These need to be from a current or former employers. If you're applying to our full-time MBA, you need to complete a short video section, and then we also require an up-to-date CV. So those would be the basic things you would need in order to apply. We also look for what's called either a Gmat score or an Executive Assessment EA score. So what these are, very briefly, is they're a standardized test to establish your verbal skills, your integrated reasoning skills, and your mathematics skills. And we do look for this just to ensure that you'll feel comfortable on the MBA, and that also, you know, you'll feel comfortable with other people on the course as well, because you'll know that you're all on the same level, you're embarking on your MBA journey. So for the full-time MBA, we do look for a minimum Gmat score of 600 and above, or an executive assessment score of 151 or above out of 200. And for the EMBA and modular, we look for a Gmat of 520 out of 800 or 149 for the executive assessment. Now, we do offer free prep sessions for these if you'd like to prepare. So these are run on Zoom, and the next session we have is the 28th of April. So it's next Wednesday evening. We run them just through Zoom. It's very casual. You can just log in, and they're with Jerry, and he concentrates on the quantitative, so the math side of the Gmat and the EA. So those are very useful to come along to. So if you do have any questions, I strongly recommend you come along to that next Wednesday. So then, what are my MBA options would be kind of the next thing to delve into. So as Sophie and Geraldine have both mentioned, we do have 3 options that you can apply for. So the first would be our full-time MBA program. So this is a year-long program. It is a full 12 months from August to August. It is fully immersive learning experience. I think Sophie said there it's more than a full-time job, so it is quite intense. It's a very diverse and international cohort. So it's a mix of domestic students and students from all over the world. We would have a lot of students come to Ireland to study with us in the Smurfit MBA. And it's really, you know, it could be used either to completely change your career, redefine it, accelerate your career. It's really whatever you want to do, but it's a great way for you to take a year out and just really concentrate on yourself, on your learning, on your leadership skills, your development, everything like that. So it is really, really amazing opportunity if you can take that year. And we recommend it for people who are, you know, best suited to an intensive style of learning and who are motivated by regular interaction with the faculty and with their peers. So then the second option we have is our Executive MBA. So this runs on a Monday and Thursday evening. So it's part-time across on those 2 evenings. And it's really for people who are comfortable balancing their work life and their study life week to week. So it's also a very good way to accelerate your career. So as Sophie mentioned, we would have a lot of people potentially from, say, technical backgrounds, medical backgrounds, the pharma industry, who are looking to accelerate into senior management, and they use the MBA to get those key business skills and knowledge. And it's a great way you combine independent study with regular interaction with us here in the campus in Smurfit. So we generally recommend that for people who are senior professionals who are in the Dublin area, just for travel purposes, obviously when COVID restrictions lift, and who are looking to accelerate their career and expand their network. And that is a 2-year part-time program. And then our final program, which is new for this year, is our Modular MBA. So this really offers the ultimate flexibility, and going back to what Geraldine said as well, for people who want to balance their very, very busy personal lives with doing an MBA, this offers them a chance, you know, to maybe do that as easily as possible, because you are only on campus once a month. It's a Friday and a Saturday, and then the rest is done online, or it's really kind of condensed into that Friday and the Saturday. You complete 1 module at a time, and it's a mix of in-person and online learning. And it's ideal for people who are maybe would consider themselves independent learners. And we'd very much recommend it for people who might not be in the Dublin area. So if you're in Carey, Cork, Limerick, and you're in a position that you can travel to Dublin once a month, it's ideal for that. And that is also a part-time program, also over 2 years. And if you want to look at the actual dates, it's all available on our website for the next 2 years. So you can actually plan out, you know, if you were able to be on campus for the next 2 years, that's all available. So this is a slide about our MBA Careers Network. So as Sophie mentioned earlier, we do have triple accreditation, and we've actually had triple accreditation for over 20 years. So if you do an MBA with Smurfit, it is recognized wherever you go in the world, and it's really reflected in our Careers Network and the career help that we get. So across all MBA programs, you get unlimited one-to-one careers coaching, career progression, all our alumni and networking events. You get a lot of employer visits, Q&As, really getting in, especially in somewhere like Dublin, which has a huge tech industry, pharma industry. You really get to know those employers. We also offer a CV book, and lots of online training courses available to you. And you can see there, firstly, our full-time MBA, the Careers Network, or the careers plan for that, is a very structured program. So it starts in September, you do regular activities, there's a senior alumni career mentors, mock interview. So it's very, it's very with you the whole way through your full-time MBA, because potentially people doing a full-time MBA are thinking about changing career. For the EMBA modular, it's a little bit more flexible. So you can kind of choose when you start it. And there's also twice yearly careers boot camps and networking workshops. So you still absolutely get the support of the career service, but with a little bit more flexibility, to what suits you. And then our latest employment data, and just to say that this is in-house data, and this is taken from the class of 2020, their statistics. So you can see our full-time class of 2020, within 3 months of graduating, 92% were employed. There was a 77% average increase in salary, and a 63% of people changed sector, which is interesting. What I also think is interesting there is 96 of those people accepted job offers in Ireland. And then for the Executive MBA, that's class of 2019, within 1 year of graduating, 80% of them are promoted. There was a 37% average increase in salary and 33% change sector. So as you can see, it's a slightly different cohort. Generally speaking, people doing part-time options are interested in staying in their current area. But of course, if you did want to pivot into a new industry, but prefer the flexibility of doing a part-time course, that's absolutely open to you as well. And then finally, you can just see some of our recent employers. Obviously, with the Smurfit MBA, you can really go anywhere. We are people across the tech industry, hospitality, pharma, medical, everything that there. You can see them all listed there. And we, as Sophie mentioned as well, we have a great alumni network as well. So then scholarships, which is always a very important part to cover. So we do offer a range of partial and full scholarships. They are merit, some are merit-based and some are needs-based. The best source of information, I would say, is our website. I'll put a link up to that now, because we do have a number of scholarships, and there are some different terms and conditions depending on which one you apply for. So we do offer a number of scholarships for women, including, as Geraldine mentioned earlier, the Women on the MBA, the 30% club scholarships, and the Image Magazine scholarship. So I can confirm as well at the moment, all those scholarships are open and taking applications. So all you need to do is when you apply to the program itself, there is a section on scholarships. You just put your information there. There's no extra steps that you need to take for that. And then finally, just to go on to some useful resources and tips. One of the best, overall, our website is very comprehensive, and I definitely recommend that you check it out if you have not already done so. But a few good particular sources would firstly be the Smurfit School blog. So that is a blog that's kept by our current students, and it gives you a great insight into what day-to-day life is like on the MBA, how our current students are finding it, and their own experiences. So that's a really good resource. We also have our news page. Smurfit is constantly involved in research, in commercial activities, so it's a great way to find out information on that. We have our webinars and our events. So like the event this evening, this will be recorded. You can watch it back. It will be available on our website. So definitely check out any of our previous recorded webinars or events. As also was mentioned, we do have a lot of clubs and societies. So Mba, there's a consulting club, FinTech, many more. You can find information about these on our blog, or on the blog would be a great source for that. As I also mentioned, I've already mentioned this, but our Gmat and our EA prep sessions, so those concentrate on quantitative, you can book through our website. They're free to attend, and the next one is taking place on the 28th of April, so very soon. Please always email me. If you have any questions that isn't obvious on the website, please do feel free to email me. We also have virtual drop-in sessions every Friday afternoon where you can drop in between 2 and 3 p.m. Again, it's done on Zoom, and you can ask one of the admissions team if you have a quick question. They'll be able to help you. And then finally, our next event is on May 20th. So I hope you can come along to that event as well, and maybe that might help with any questions or anything else that you can have. So that was a very quick tour of the admissions process, scholarships, and a little bit about careers. So now I am just going to hand back to Sophie, and I will chat to you later on. So thank you very much.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Jessica. So thank you for that. So just a reminder to you that if you do have a question, of course, you can use the Q&A function, and we're just answering some questions as we go this evening. Okay, so now I just want to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Orla Byrne. And Orla is going to host our panel discussion this evening. And as I mentioned, Orla teaches entrepreneurship on the MBA program. So thanks, Orla, for joining us tonight. I'm going to hand over to you to lead the discussion, the panel discussion this evening.
That's great. Thank you very much, Sophie, and thanks to yourself and Jessica for a wonderful overview of the programmes. I have to say, I was quite excited hearing all the options, all this global travel, all the modules that are covered. You've almost convinced me to sign up myself, ladies. But yes, as Sophie mentioned, I'm actually an assistant professor on the MBA programme myself, and I teach entrepreneurship, which is one of the more experiential modules when Sophie was talking about experiential learning. And I'm also involved in supervising Capstone projects as well. So I can vouch for all that part of the programme. But I'm delighted to be chairing the event, the panel discussion tonight. And we have 4 fabulous speakers. Can I invite you all to turn on your cameras? We've got Caitlin, Susie, Micaela, and Danielle. And what I will do is I'll ask you to introduce yourselves, if that's okay. So if we could start with you, Micaela, could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's really exciting to be on with all the UCD community. My name's Micaela Connery. I am based in San Francisco, California, so it is noontime for me, not the evening. And I am the co-founder and CEO of a not-for-profit called the Kelsey, working on disability forward, inclusive housing solutions in the US. And I was a full-time MBA in 2016 to 2017.
Great, thanks, Micaela. Caitlin, can you tell us about yourself?
Hi, Orla. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Caitlin McBride. I am a full-time MBA student. I began my MBA journey in September, and I'll be completing it this September. And I am also this year's Image Scholar. So if anyone has any queries about that, I would be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. Susie, can you tell us about yourself?
Hi, good evening, everybody. So my name is Susie. I'm a midweek EMBA, so I'm coming towards the end of my second year. So I'm a pharmacist by profession, but actually for the last 4 years now, I've been working for a financial technology company.
Thank you, Susie. And Danielle?
Hi, everyone. My name's Danielle. I am a medical doctor, currently based in Dublin and working in community medicine, but my background is actually in anaesthetics. So I haven't done that a little while, but I am currently working in a semi-tech, semi-clinical role with CHI and soon to be relocating to Melbourne.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. It's great to hear the variety of backgrounds that we have and the variety of programs that you're involved in as well. So if I can begin, can I ask you about when and why you decided that you'd like to do an MBA, that it was something that you wanted to consider? Micaela, can you start us off?
Sure. So my journey might be a little bit unique. I was a master's in public policy student at Harvard Kennedy School in Boston, and was working on policy related to housing and disability. And about near the end of that's a 2-year program, and near the end of my first year, I realized that, for policy to actually move solutions forward, it needed to be sort of rooted in public-private partnerships, and how to, especially in the real estate and housing world that's so deeply related to business and enterprise, how do we also leverage the private sector? And so wanted to add on a business degree to my policy degree. And it's quite common here in the US for people to do joint business and policy, and was looking at US programs, but then found I'd spent some time in Ireland and was eager to go back, and was awarded a scholarship through the US Ireland Alliance called the George Mitchell Scholarship, and was able to then do my MBA in Ireland, which gave me sort of 2 benefits, both obviously adding the business curriculum and to my policy degree, but also adding an international perspective and an international education experience to my US education. And that's been incredibly valuable in my work now, having both of those perspectives. I will also say that the George Mitchell program, and for those of you thinking about schooling in the US, the Mitchell Scholars allows you get into the program and then you kind of can work to pick whichever graduate degree you want to pursue. And I will tell you that over and over again, UCD Smurfette was from the US regarded as the strongest business program in Ireland. And so that was a real draw to specifically then select the MBA program at UCD after being in the scholars program. So I was really excited and actually lived on campus in Blackrock in the dorms at UCD. So that was part of the experience as well.
So interesting and great to hear that feedback on Smurfette as well. Caitlin, what about yourself? Why and when did you decide you wanted to do an MBA?
Yeah, I suppose I would echo Micaela in that I'm a non-traditional, or so I would consider myself to be a non-traditional MBA student. My background is in journalism. I spent the last 10 years working in journalism, the last 7 of which were at the Irish Independent. And so I had kind of reached this stage both in my life and in my career. I think my decision to pursue an MBA was slightly more existential because I had reached this point in my life and my career where I knew that I had kind of reached as far as I was going to go in my work. And in the last few years, when I had been exposed to the business side, it always really excited me, and in a way that journalism hadn't excited me in some time. And so I had been thinking about an MBA probably for about 3 years, but really kind of bit the bullet last summer and made the decision to pursue it. And it's been honestly one of the best decisions I've ever made. I really can't say enough positive things about the experience, but that's kind of what brought me to it. And I wrote down the 3 things that Geraldine mentioned at the beginning of the conversation about a lack of flexibility, cost, and a lack of confidence as being prohibitive factors for women in particular pursuing an MBA. And I certainly identify with all 3 of them, but I think probably a lack of confidence for me was a huge issue, both in applying and going through the whole experience. And I think maybe some of the other people in attendance might be in a similar boat as to where I was even a year ago, and my confidence had taken a lot of knocks. And so building it back up and through this very practical way has been a really, really wonderful experience.
Oh, great to hear, Caitlin. Yeah. Can I just flag as well that if anybody has any questions for any of the panelists as we go, please enter them into Q&A and there will be an opportunity to post them to our panelists at the end as well. Thank you. So now thinking about why Smurfette, Danielle, can you tell us why you chose Smurfette? What was your thinking?
Well, I've been similar to probably what Caitlin said. I've been thinking about an MBA for 3 years at least, and in my head there was no other place I was going to go if I was in Ireland. So if you are thinking of doing an MBA in Ireland, there's no question of where you should go. There are obviously great business schools internationally, but for me, I needed to be fairly close to based at home in order to continue to work. And it gave me all of the opportunities I could have possibly hoped for on my doorstep. So for in the Irish context, it's certainly, and even internationally, obviously, it eclipses many of its competitors. So and certainly from the experience I had, I finished my EMBA in just last year, so in 2020. And the experience has just been phenomenal. It is eye-opening and mind-opening. So I'm a big advocate for UCD Smurfette.
Thank you, Danielle. Susie, I see you nodding your head. What was your thinking?
Well, I suppose I did quite extensive due diligence before I picked Smurfette, because in my workplace I'm up against the likes of the Harvard MBAs and the Oxford and everything. So I really wanted to make sure that the school I chose was going to be really up there with the very best. And as Sophie outlined earlier, the school is so widely acclaimed and so well accredited. But actually, when I dug into it a bit deeper, the array of modules, but also the content of the curriculum is really up to date, like the data analytics and digital transformation in the industry that I'm in now, in most industries, being really up to speed and cutting edge, and having up to date content really to bring into the office is important. So that really stood out to me as I was going through the various opening evenings. And then I guess the other thing was, the length of time that this MBA has been in place. I really wanted to build a good network, and there's such a, extensive alumni, and, you're given very good access to them. So building a network was something else that was very important to me. And it was very clear that, Smurfit was going to be one of the best places for that.
And Susie, you're on the program at the moment. What's the highlight as you're going through it?
Well, speaking of the network there, I have to say, the friends I've made, in class, are just going to be lifelong, really good connections to have both personally, and also professionally. It's interesting to build friends that you can really lean on for professional support and almost career guidance. The learning that I get from them, transferable, skills from their industries, or, points of learning that they share with me is absolutely fantastic. So I would certainly say the network that you build is a highlight. And then, the academic course content itself, I had never studied business or finance or anything like that in a profession or in sort of any formal capacity. So, I was a little bit nervous about that, but, everything has been, very doable and really interesting and very applicable, in my work. So I've really enjoyed it.
Okay, it'll be interesting to compare your experiences and Micaela with yours, because Susie and Caitlin are in the middle of it all at the moment. But looking back a few years out of Smurfit, what would you say are the highlights for you?
Yep, I can start. I would say two things. One was it was mentioned in sort of the overview of the program, but the ability to sort of work on real life problems and scenarios as part of our coursework, and obviously especially during the capstone. So whether in your class, Orla, or in others, I was able to really tailor the coursework, which was obviously general across all business, but then do particular projects or do particular case studies that were either related to housing or social entrepreneurship or public-private partnership. And so that was really nice, and actually did my capstone at Ashoka, Ireland, working on the Kelsey and finalizing our business plan there. So just having that opportunity to do real work in the context of coursework was wonderful. I'd also say my other highlight was that I joined, and actually was how I got to know a lot of the EMBA students, that I got very last minute roped into joining the rugby team. Now, I did not even know what rugby was really, but they needed one more player to qualify for women's, and people had seen me running around Blackrock. They were like, "We see you, you're kind of sporty, you're quite tall, like, would you be willing to come and join the team and help us play in the NBA Rugby World Cup?" And a week later, I was flying to Danville, Virginia with a bunch of EMBA students and played rugby, and it was really fun, and actually how I made some of my closest friends during the program. So that was a bit of crack, as they say, and that was my one and only time playing rugby, but it was probably one of the highlights of my Smurfit experience.
And that's nice, Micaela, because it gives us a sense of what college life is like in Smurfit. It's a small campus, and it's intimate. People get to know each other quite easily. Was that your experience?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And most of the, I would say that the Irish students, it was predominantly people who lived in the college, were international students. So it was a nice balance that I got to know international students in the dorm life, but then my Irish classmates and also Irish students in the EMBA program were just so wonderful, and sort of also inviting me to get to know Irish culture and get to know Ireland and feel a part of the city and the community too. So best of both worlds there.
Oh, great. Sounds like a great experience.
Yeah.
Caitlin, for you, how do you think the taking on the MBA, how is it changing you professionally or personally? What kind of changes do you think?
It's funny, I had to think long about this question, because when it comes down to it, I suppose, of course, when you're studying business formally, you're going to get that academic knowledge and you're going to improve your confidence in that way. But I think for me, it's more the soft skills. I would have considered myself a communications expert prior to enrolling in the MBA, but now I consider myself a communications expert. I think my communication, well, hopefully you guys agree, but I find it much more purposeful now. And all of that is coming from this increased confidence that I suddenly have in myself. One of the reservations I had was that I suppose in my past life, I never really had imposter syndrome. I was always really confident in what I did. I was like, no, I'm great at my job. Had imposter syndrome about everything else, but never my work. But I had imposter syndrome in the MBA because you really are with these really extraordinary people who are so intelligent, from whom you can learn so much. And I think that being around these wonderful people who have become friends now has really helped. And I know I just said my communication was purposeful, and now I keep getting lost in thought and contradicting myself. But I think for me, it's been a very personally rewarding experience. It's nice meeting people from all different backgrounds, working with them, learning from them, hoping you can, give, it can be a give and take, but it's been great. So I think that it's really the people, it's the class, and it's the diverse pool of the class that I think would be what I'm mostly taking away from this.
Yeah, and hopefully that network that Micaela spoke about as well. And I think you're probably being modest, Caitlin. I'm sure your classmates are learning a huge amount from you as well. What about yourself, Danielle? What do you think about, how do you think it's changed you personally or professionally?
Well, in medicine, you are pigeonholed almost straight away. So you become a specialist, super specialist, and you keep going. You're on a treadmill, and you just follow the treadmill rather than actually thinking outside the box or considering that there is life outside the box. So what the MBA did for me was it opened my mind to the fact, firstly, that I can learn again, and I can relearn processes and relearn how to operate in a world that I actually didn't understand very much until I stepped outside the box. So the education I have received from Smurfit, from my colleagues, from the super professors that taught us, and from the trips away, which were amazing. The experiential learning was so important. But all of these bits kind of fit together, nearly like a jigsaw coming together. So really opened my mind as to what I can do. And those who I learned with, it was a shared learning experience. So both myself and my colleagues, although you don't feel like you're offering much when you're back, you don't feel that that's going to be that beneficial, but actually how you think is valuable. So you can, you learn that you can make decisions about certain things, and you learn about other people's perspectives and people in a whole array of industries, which is an education in itself. So you have your colleagues and your classmates teach they would be the main things.
Yeah. Susie, thank you, Danielle. How's this being leveraged in your work environment at the moment, all this learning? What's the transferability of it all?
Well, myself, I'm finding it very, very useful. I guess there's, a couple of different parts. There is, like I mentioned, there is the academic content, but also there is this way of thinking, as I'm, coming to, prioritize issues that come up during the day, planning, ahead, what are we going to do with our roadmap? I'm thinking about it from a senior management perspective and linking it to, what's our vision? What's the long-term goal of the business? Will this fit in with our, is it going to scale? All this kind of thing. So I'm thinking about things differently in my daily work based on what I've learned. And then the other thing is there are some really practical things that that they learn. So we have this executive coach provided to us. So it's almost like I don't know, would you describe it as a professional counselor? So just someone, it's a little different to careers, but it's someone to help you kind of work through, issues that are coming up in work, and, perhaps, different skills that you might need to manage those. So, from that, I've picked up some really good targeted sort of an action plan, I guess, devised to improve my management skills. So how I manage the team, how I navigate and position us, to senior management, and, and identify opportunities as well for my own career. So it's a little hard to articulate, I guess, and everyone's experience of it is quite different. But, you really do get from Smurfit this great support to kind of plan how you're going to apply what you've learned to your own career and use it, to progress yourself up the ladder.
Yeah, I see you nodding there, Caitlin. Have you had similar support then as well?
Yeah, I probably was subconscious smiling at the
Oh,
executive
it's good.
coaching because I just finished my my last session with a wonderful one who it was interesting the way you said it, Susie, is that you present these situations and you almost reverse engineer, and they're great at not only supporting you but making you think that you came up with the idea yourself. And so but it's great to have that objective perspective in things, both kind of in if you're working in an executive MBA and therefore obviously working full-time as well, or if you're as a full-time student and obviously there's going to be, you're trying to manage various different things. So I had a really, really positive experience with that. And I've also signed up to the mentorship program as well. And he has been I cannot say enough nice things about him. So I really would echo Susie in what you're saying, that there's huge supports in place. And my big motto is just say yes to everything that is available to you and make the most out of it, because it is a unique opportunity. And say yes and just figure it out.
So there's plenty offered. Yeah, plenty available. Danielle, you mentioned the trips. Can you tell us a little bit about the trips? Micaela, you're laughing. I'm going to come to you next. Sounds like you've got.
I won't tell you too much,
the
Orla, but what I will tell you, no, the trips were amazing. So I actually, we were on the last trip before the town hall. We have just in early March. We were actually meant to go to China, which fortunately we didn't end up in China. So we were I was on two big trips. So there was Finland and Stockholm, or Finland and Sweden last year. And then the year prior, I was in Lisbon. And so they were two quite different trips. So the trip in Lisbon is very similar to your Capstone. It's a mini version of your Capstone project, very intense, 5 days working on a problem that you've chosen with the group in which you're working. So you actually choose the problem based on what you like or what draws you, and you end up with a group of sometimes like and sometimes not like-minded people, and you work on it together. It's an amazing journey actually, because you don't realize at the start how much you're going to learn in such a short space of time, and how much you can bounce off each other, and the benefit that you actually bring to a company. So I had only, for the Lisbon trip, I'd just done the first year of the MBA, and you really don't think, you don't know how you're going to put all of that learning into action, and actually see it on that trip. And just in 5 days, you can really see the benefits of all the modules you have covered in the previous year. So it's an amazing opportunity. You get to know classmates that you may not have been in group with before, and you learn an awful lot from each other, and it's great fun. You have the some of the professors come with you, so you have a mentor on the group, or on the trip, which is also amazing, and they offer all kinds of insights into how to approach the problem best, because it's all centered around the problem. And you do work hard and you do work late, but it's a lot of fun. Equally with the Finland
Okay, Danielle's line is a little shaky at the moment. We can come back to Danielle in a moment. Micaela, did you go on some trips?
Yeah, I went to Tokyo and Seoul, and then Iceland as well. And I was just smiling because they were just such a highlight. And again, I think for me, opportunities I really valued my full-time MBA classmates, but I do think also opportunities to interact with the EMBAs were really powerful mix. And so those trips were another opportunity to do that as well. The only thing besides them being really fun and really wonderful learning experiences, I think one of the interesting, and I give this as recommendations too, and thinking about the policy program I did, is I do think the best way to get something out of a graduate degree is to be both open to new learnings, but relatively specific about what you want to focus in on, or come to those as soon as possible, because you can soak as much out of it. So like for me, I'll use the example, I was quite interested in this idea of housing and adults with disabilities. And so, you know, whether I was in Ireland looking at the cultures of and systems of care for older adults or adults with disabilities in Ireland, or in Japan, talking about sort of the care culture in Japan and how they structure those together, it gave me a lens through which to have those experiences where it was broad and I didn't pigeonhole myself that I only thought about those issues, but I think you have a much more meaningful experience, and why I also think the level of time in the professional life and sort of before coming to Smurfit is really powerful, because you know, it just coming in sort of broad and being like, I, you know, think business is interesting. You might change what you want to focus on while you're there, but the more you kind of have your theme of areas that you're extracting or relating or bringing back the work to, I think the more meaningful the degree is going to be. And I see some questions about like how you use this later on. I think you get more out of that experience when you kind of have, I'd like to move from here to here by the end of the program. And the application process makes you think about what that is. And then the experience really is made richer by having done that thinking and having that kind of plan of what you want to go forward with.
And I love the way you were able to use, you know, the capstone and everything you were going through as a way to advance your thinking on the Kelsey. So you were getting the best of all the expertise and really accelerating that process then as well. Okay, ladies, you're all hugely accomplished, hugely ambitious, hugely successful. How on earth do you balance an MBA with your work, family lives? How have you been doing it? Caitlin, do you want to let us in on some of the secrets?
Thank you for the ego booster. How do I do it? Honestly, with exceptional time management skills, and I have a feeling that all my fellow panelists will say the same thing, because it does require exceptional time management skills. But for me, you know, it's something that I've really wanted to do. And so I am probably putting maybe more into it than others, maybe less than others, but I am putting a lot into it as a personal investment. And so I manage my time really efficiently. I have very lucky to have a great support network. I don't have any children. And so that also obviously affects my experience, because I really only have myself to worry about and my fiance, but he's a grown man. And he's a great support. But it's just about, you know, when you kind of push yourself and you push yourself and you push yourself, you realize you can actually, your bandwidth is quite big and you can handle a lot. And you know, it's just about, I think, prioritizing. You have your short, your medium, and your long-term goals. You set them out as the most practical way to do it. You ideally build some kind of a support network around you, whether that be personal or your classmates or professional, and then just try to put your head down and do it. And the more you accomplish, the more you realize you can, and that kind of keeps the momentum going. So yeah, lots of time management, lots of coffee. I didn't drink coffee before I did the MBA, and just, I don't know, try to get a good night's sleep wherever you can.
Yeah. Susie, how do you balance it with work?
I mean, a lot of what Caitlin had said. I think one other thing I would say to add to that is to manage the expectations of other people, you know, like your family and your friends. You know, you are going to have less bandwidth for them, you know, during this time than you would have had previously. And you'll have that time again after, but just to, you know, typically I would have always been the person when someone said, oh, would you be available? Or, you know, can you help out with this or that? Or, you know, will you come along to this? And I'd normally say, yeah, I probably will. And I probably would. And I had to suddenly switch to start being like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that. It may clash. Let me check my schedule. And I had to kind of go into a slightly different mode and say, oh, I'm probably not going to be able to do that. If I can, it's great. And I certainly will. So I just had to adjust my, you know, the availability that, you know, that I gave to other people, and it's only for this period. And I would say, oh, I'll be free again, you know, at the end of the semester. So I think that was probably one thing. And then similarly with your employer, just being really upfront about that and planning far out and just saying, look, this is going to be a pinch time for me. And, you know, trying to just shift, you know, pinch points in work, if possible, away from the ones that will be clashing with college. So just shifting around, I think.
And they have been accommodating, Susie, have they, at work?
Yeah, where possible. I mean, there's been clashes, but you know, that's sure, what can you do? You can only be in one place at one time, but mostly they have been. And once again, just being organized and knowing well enough in advance. I mean, you know, UCD aren't going to spring anything on you at the last minute. You know, everything is mapped out for the whole semester. You know exactly when you're going to be needed and where. And the same with your group. And everyone in the group, I must say, in group work is very respectful of everyone else's, you know, work and family commitments. So you're not really, I don't know that many people have been landed in anything at the last minute by their groups. You know, everybody plans accordingly and, you know, balances the work throughout the semester. So there shouldn't really be too much pinch.
Micaela, you seem to have gotten a good work-life balance with your rugby and your running and your studying and everything. How did you manage it all?
Well, I think also I had founded a nonprofit before going to grad school and worked myself into the ground for 6 years. And so I think when I went to grad school, I was like, I'm like, this is an experience. I'm not gonna like, you know, be heads down. It's about everything that happens in and outside the classroom. So, and that was the case when I was at Harvard and the case when I was at UCD. I think like the big trick too is like, the hard thing about grad school is getting in. And then once you're there, you do need to get the most out of the experience, but you know, your grades don't matter necessarily as much as like your overall performance with your team and with your group, as Susie mentioned, and your professors. And so I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this, but like I was not necessarily like super focused on, you know, in Neve Brennan's class of getting the perfect score on the exam. And I can tell you I did not. What I was really focused on is performing for my group and not being that member of my group who didn't deliver on what I said I would do and wasn't contributing in the right way. And so there's a lot of analogy to that in the professional world too, of like prioritizing and understanding what you want to get out of the experience and making sure, I think first and foremost, you're, you know, meeting obviously what your goals are, and then also being accountable to your classmates. Those are like your colleagues, and performing for them. And then third is, what is your priorities beyond that? And so, you know, both to Caitlin's point on time management, but also on prioritization of what matters the most to you and what does success look like for you at the end of that experience, which I think is, you know, if you really do want to, you know, quantitatively, and that's your thing, then like by all means spend your time studying on that. But for me, it was about a lot of other stuff outside the experience too. It was a year that I was living in Ireland that I wouldn't have had the experience otherwise. So
yeah, you're able to make it your own then as well. Danielle, transferring from a world of medicine and a life that's very disciplined in that way, how did you find coming into the MBA in terms of balancing things?
I guess so what I did was I was doing the midweek MBA. So I worked on Monday, or I was basically working every day of the week, to be honest. I worked a lot of weekends to make up for the Monday, Thursday commitments. But what I did before I started was I made sure with my employer, so they're VHI, so I worked a lot in the community at the minute. So I just made sure they knew of my commitments, because often on Mondays and Thursdays, you're so wrecked by the time you get home that the next day you're just a bit slow in the morning. So I often delayed my starts on Tuesdays and Fridays. So that really helped. And there was just an understanding that, oh yeah, you know, you just take your time coming in, and then I would leave a bit later. So that's often what I did. In terms of self-care, I think that's really important. I did take days off, so every few, I can't really put a number on it, but I would take a weekend off if I had no group work the next day. I would take a Saturday and Sunday and do nothing. So you do need to do that as well, and that happens probably once every 8 to 12 weeks. You'll just go, I'm going to sleep for the weekend, and that's totally fine. Once you have, as the others have echoed, made sure that you have backup, so that you have support, physical and emotional and psychological support, because there are times where you feel like you can't do it, but you always can. It's just a different kind of environment, and it's much more supportive than if people get flashbacks like your leaving cert and the stress you would be under your leaving cert. This is nothing like that, because there are about 50 of you doing your leaving cert together, and you're all trying to answer the exact same question. So it's a really great time to be in your leaving cert in your 30s. But yeah, just make self-care is one thing, and like it doesn't have to necessarily be physical. It can be running or yoga or whatever you like, but even just stopping and going for a walk is also really important, because you don't get the benefit unless you sit back for a while and think, whoa, I learned a lot this term or last week or through this group. So there, just take it easy. You can totally do it. You will be working. If you're working full time, it is hard, but it's totally doable. Even if you do have children, I don't have children, but one of the girls in my class who I was always in the same group as, she had 3 children. So she was late 30s, 3 small boys at home, and just managed by having a supportive structure at work and by sometimes just not being able to make the calls. So that's okay too. You just say it. You should never be silent. You just say, guys, I can't make the group work tonight. Can I catch up tomorrow or the following day? And it's always fine. You just go open communication about where you're at.
Okay, some great tips there, Danielle. Do you have any other tips in general for anyone considering an MBA?
I would say if you're thinking about it and you think you have maybe stagnated or stopped learning, and you think that you've reached a point where you don't think you can go any further, or you feel maybe this isn't for me, this is definitely something you should be thinking about. Doing an MBA is, for me, as someone who was very pigeonholed, and I mean, I've done exams all my life. I'm really used to exams, but I've forgotten that actually there is a whole world out there that you can access, but the MBA actually gives you the platform to access it. So without the MBA, I would never have gone into something that's semi-clinical and semi-tech. It just wouldn't have entered my radar at all. I wouldn't have thought I would have any knowledge of it. And to be honest, I didn't until I got on the job, and I understood, right, there's a process for everything. You have learned so many different skills through all of your modules throughout the 2 years or 1 year if you're doing full time. And you are such a valuable member of the team you join by virtue of the fact that you've done an MBA. So I really couldn't recommend it enough. Brilliant.
Thank you. Micaela, what about you? What tips would you offer to anybody considering it?
I think to echo Danielle's point, I think it's a great pivot point. And so I think what I mentioned earlier of just being specific about what that is, and specific doesn't mean that when I get out of this, I want to like work for X company, but just having focus areas and or coursework or just things that you want to move through so that you can set goals and then make sure that you're curating the experience to meet those goals. And I guess that's the second one is like you are, I believe strongly, and this has been my whole life, you are a consumer of your own education. So this is an experience, whether you are on scholarship or you're paying it in full, you are a customer. And so you should curate that experience as it makes sense for you and as you get what you want out of it. So that requires some personal thinking, both as you come in and throughout the program of, am I prioritizing what I want? My experience did not look like Susie's, did not look like Caitlin's, did not look like Danielle's. And that's wonderful that the Smurfit program allows that to be the case. And so making sure that you kind of are in the driver's seat on that and get the most out of it. And then I'd say the other thing is just to be like organized, and this is like a little like more technical, but just in how you take notes and how you structure that. Like this is really nerdy, but I got like a Surface right before I went to school and like had all of my notes super organized so that I could easily refer to them, like figuring out what your systems are of how you're going to be going from class to maybe your capstone to something else. So just looking at it like a job in that sense too, of what are your management systems and how do you process and save all that information, because there's a lot of it.
Yeah, so to think about that nearly in advance as well. Susie, what about yourself? Have any tips?
Yeah, so, well, I guess one thing was in terms of the application process, I actually found that a really useful kind of, period. You do those 2 essays. I thought it seemed really daunting. And then I was like, it's actually really useful. It forces you to do reflection. Why am I doing this? Where do I want to go in my career? How will this fit in? So I found the application process itself to be a really useful tool. Also doing the Gmat or the executive assessment, you have to do some actual, sit down, get out a book, study and practice questions for that. And that was also a really useful thing to be like, gosh, where is my study desk back before we worked from home? Where is my study desk at home? How do I cut myself off for like a couple of hours and sit down and concentrate and write out notes and that kind of thing? So the application process is a good test as well to see if this is the right time for for you and what your expectations are. And then I had one other tip and I'm trying to think what it was. Oh yes, in terms of pitching this to your employer. So I think, Sophie outlined, or Jessica outlined earlier, there are great financial supports. And so, really do go after those. You get also, great support from the school in the application process. But, in terms of pitching this to your employer, it was still a bit of a sell for me in regards to, needing quite a bit of study leave and that kind of thing. But it's worth pointing out that they get very early payback from it, not just in the value like that you bring to your team with all the new learning, which, is definitely the first thing to point out. But secondly, almost every semester in a couple of the modules, you do a project, and they're generally based on someone's own company. So I think there's one in HR, there's one in like leadership and organization behavior, there's one in operations, there's the Capstone project itself. So this is a team of MBA students coming, looking at a problem in your company and, analyzing it, proposing solutions, making recommendations, and like, they don't pay for that. Like that's hugely valuable. And I know my company has had one or two, reports off the back of those projects, and they've been really beneficial. And I do think, rather than paying for consultants to come into the company, that's hugely valuable. So I think that would be a real sweetener as well if you wanted to get it across the line.
Great idea. Yes, absolutely. Now, so given the nature of the evening and the wonderful collaboration with Image, we'll go to Caitlin, the Image Scholar, for our last contribution, and then we'll head back to Sophie. So, Caitlin, what would be your tips for people?
My main tip, and this is probably something that I'm more speaking to myself, but would be to get out of your own way. And to believe in yourself and to know, because sometimes I find that we kind of get these internal roadblocks of, and it all kind of does come back a little bit to confidence. But my main advice would be to, if you're really interested in it, research it, really look into it, attend these great events. It was these kind of events that really swung me to attending towards Smurfit. Do your research. Know what you're in for, because it is tough, and I think we can all attest to it. It's tough, but it's not impossible. It's challenging, but it's really satisfying. And I think if you prepare yourself for a really enriching and challenging year or 2 years, you can have the greatest experience and say yes to everything as well. That's what exactly I have said yes to everything. And I would encourage everyone else to as well, and avail of any of the resources and supports that are available through Smurfit.
Super. Thank you very much. Thank you all, ladies. I think we can go back to Sophie. I'm sure there's been plenty of questions coming in as we've been nattering away here. Sophie, over to you. Did you have some questions you wanted to raise?
Thanks, Orla. Well, just to say thanks to you, Orla, as well, for your time, and thanks to all our panelists. Very much appreciated. Yeah, I'm going to host some Q&As now to lead us into the end of the session and the webinar. So I'm first of all going to link in with Kathy in marketing and my marketing colleague to see, Kathy, if any questions have come in for us, and I can work out who might be the best person to answer them.
Sure, Sophie, thanks so much. It was a really interesting and engaging discussion there, and plenty of questions for our panelists. So I might start with those initially. We've one question here, which is quite interesting. Somebody has said that they have expressed interest in an MBA to their senior management, and has got feedback that possibly they're not worthwhile anymore in this day and age, and that professional experience can give you the same leg up. What would the panelists think about that view in the professional world?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Thanks, Kathy. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that that you'd like to share with us. So it sounds like that person maybe is being a little bit discouraged from doing an MBA. It kind of sounds like somebody is saying, well, maybe it's not really worth the time or the investment. Has anyone had that experience, or even not in their own workplace, just from other colleagues, or what would you advise? I don't know.
I've had the opposite experience, actually. So so when I suggested so this might be helpful if you flip it on its head. So when I suggested that I would do an MBA years ago, what I got was, wow, that's such a commitment. I would never do that. You're mad. Oh my God, my sister did it, whatever. So I think that someone else's value is not necessarily what, unless they have done it themselves. It really depends on the leg up you're looking for. So if your leg up is to expand how you do things and where you see yourself going, that is much more valuable than a perceived lack of advancement by someone who sounds like they're a bit older, sounds like they probably did their undergrad and postgraduate training years and years ago. So I wouldn't necessarily take that for what it is. I wouldn't agree with it, obviously, because I've done it. But I think that it's I can't speak to what I would do in that scenario. But all I can say is the opposite. I have received the opposite type of criticism. So I wouldn't be discouraged. Is really what I'm trying to say.
Thanks, Danielle. That's great. Thank you. Kathy, what about any other questions?
Yes. Another question that came in was regarding working in a very male-dominated work environment, and how has the MBA prepared our panelists in asserting their place in executive decision-making? Any experiences of that post-MBA or during the MBA?
So Susie, I think you were about to speak there. Do you want to take that one?
Well, only to say that, I guess I'm working also in a very male-dominated company, but and I certainly suffered from imposter syndrome, which we mentioned earlier. Having come from a pharmacy background and into fintech, I arrived going, oh, I don't know anything about software. God, I don't know anything about finance. What am I doing here? And this has given me, and I came to learn through experience that actually my skills are very transferable. I know lots. Any questions I ask are very difficult for some people to answer, so they're very valid. And I think that the MBA has just really, solidified that confidence. And, it's given me it's given me additional knowledge, but really it's the soft skills as well that Caitlin mentioned earlier. I back myself now, and, if I have a question to ask, I'll ask it, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. So I would certainly think I'm very comfortable with challenging my male or female counterparts, as necessary. And I'm certainly much more comfortable in my own skin in the organization now than I was, say, 2 years ago.
Thanks, Susie. That's great. And it's probably worth mentioning, actually, that there is a module called Executive Decision Making that I don't know, Danielle and Micaela may have undertaken as well. So that is an option. I know the question was around executive decision making in a male environment. So we do have one of our lecturers, Stephen Boyle, teaches that module too. So that obviously probably helps in terms of the kind of academic side. Okay, Kathy,
thanks. Yeah, Sophie, another question. This is probably more relevant for Susie and Caitlin, but the programme has been described as very interactive. And how has that experience been during the pandemic? How effective has it been and participating on the course during these extraordinary times?
Yeah, so maybe Caitlin, I don't know if you want to take that one. I mean, obviously, we have been online for our students have been online for most of the year. So it's certainly, from my point of view, managing the program, it's definitely been a challenge. And, we've just realized that we have to just keep communicating and over communicating. But I don't know, Caitlin, from your own point of view, what your own view is and your own experience.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the big reasons I chose Smurfit as well was because of all the wonderful travel opportunities, which of course no one is going anywhere now, but you are connected virtually, which is the second best thing. I think, when I was very fortunate in that in September, we were allowed 2 weeks of in-person training, or in-person classes on campus. And in those 2 weeks kind of really laid the foundation for some friendships and some relationships, especially with your group. And so that was really great. I know 2 weeks doesn't sound like a lot, but I think if we've learned anything over the last year, time is a very valuable currency. And those 2 weeks were quite invaluable. Since then, obviously, it's been a challenge. Nobody wants to be, attending classes over Zoom. And as Sophie's saying, it's especially challenging delivering it as well. But I think, like anything, you make the most out of it. Smurfit and MBAs around the world are not going to be the exception to a global pandemic. And I think that how you adapt to it will, if anything, kind of show your kind of attitude in general. And I think you have to roll with the punches in some of these situations, and this is one of them. And so it just means we just make more of an effort, whether now we can actually at least meet in person sometimes outside and socially distance. But I mean, the MBA room is still open in campus. So sometimes if I ever feel like I'm a little too isolated in my, box room at home, I can go in there and have some conversations with some of my colleagues. And then, you keep your WhatsApp group going, and sometimes you have your virtual drinks or whatever it might be, but you just have to make more of an effort. And it's the same thing that people are experiencing in their personal relationships and in their friendships and in building those networks. So it just requires a little more effort, a good attitude, and just hoping that it'll all be over soon. Not the MBA, the pandemic.
Thanks very much, Caitlin. Kathy, do you have any more questions for us?
Yeah, I think there was a question around sort of how the programme has supported you or is supporting you in your day-to-day roles. I know some of that was covered during the discussion, but if there's anything further to add on that particular topic, how you're applying your learning, I guess, day to day, maybe Susie or Danielle, you might have some thoughts on that, or how it's supporting you now, kind of having been through the Exec MBA and sort of juggling the work and studying.
Yeah, I think one thing, it is to that question earlier, I think that someone that was being kind of challenged by their senior management on the value of it. And I think, the company I work in, we've grown very, very fast. It's all, cutting edge industry and that kind of thing. And yeah, I've got very valuable, just not doing the MBA and just working there, I would have got very valuable experience. I can see our mission. I can see how we're achieving that. I can see how we've grown through acquisition. I can see the mix of strategy and, changing the product footprint and this kind of thing. I would have seen it in action with my experience, but having done the MBA, I've got frameworks to hand now. I can put structure and shape on, I can really get inside sort of, I can understand what the CEO was talking about at the town halls when we said, we did this in a certain way. There's real management language that those guys use. And, as a result of this MBA, I can understand it very well, but I can really put proper shape on it as well. I can see I can bring that framework. The guys will probably know, from the competitive and corporate strategy courses, you really do pick up some useful, Harvard Business School, kind of from those articles, the different frameworks and tricks and jargon that they use. You can really identify that in action and see it for what it is and see where you fit into it then as well. So I think from that perspective, I find it very valuable.
And probably another thing I've heard our students and alumni say is, and people who have come from a non-business background, it's really just kind of learning the business of language is probably part of what you're saying as well, Susie. It's when you're not familiar with that, or Danielle coming as a medical doctor, you're not used to the business speak, and it helps grow your confidence and your ease in that kind of space as well. So you're nodding, so hopefully. Yeah.
I should point out I work in the financial HQ as well, so I'm mostly working with the accounting and finance guys, and so to be able to liaise comfortably with them is definitely a bonus.
And just to echo that, but also say that it looks amazing when you can pull a framework out of one of your lectures from semester 2 and say, here's what I've put together. It looks so impressive when people aren't used to it, particularly if you're. Now, some tech people obviously will be more in tune with a lot of those things, but certainly from my perspective, anytime I've used any of the frameworks I've learned has been really beneficial and actually broadens the horizon in terms of where the group or the effort is going. So while they're really great long term, they're also great in the short term just for yourself.
Thanks, Danielle.
Great. And maybe just one final one, Sophie. There was a couple of questions in about the difference between the Gmat and the EA and how these are completed. And I suppose coupled with that, for the panelists, how long do they study for the Gmat and prepare for that? So maybe if you want to maybe explain the difference between the two, and then we put it to the panelists in terms of prep.
I might get Jessica, if you don't mind, Jess, to answer that first part of the question, and then maybe the panelists might want to give their own experience. Is that okay?
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're both of them are standardized tests. So the main difference would be the Gmat is the kind of original test. So it's the gold standard. It was developed about 40-50 years ago by GMAC, and it's a full 3-hour exam. So it's quite intense. It looks at things like geometry, trigonometry, some things you may not have studied since potentially secondary school. And it is quite a full-on exam. As I said, it is a 3-hour exam. It's really designed for people sitting full-time MBAs, but what Gmat have developed in the last few years is this executive assessment. And essentially what they did is they looked at what are the real things you really need to know in terms of the math side and the verbal and integrated reasoning side of things. They pulled up those questions and they consolidated and made a more streamlined exam. So for example, the EA is a 90-minute exam, whereas the GMAC is a 3-hour exam. In terms of, we personally, from an admissions perspective, don't have a preference. Some people prefer to sit the GMAT because they like the challenge of it. It does look good in a CV, and I do know that some employers do like to see a GMAT, and they, it's something that they like to see. They like to see a high GMAT score. But for the purposes of admission for us, certainly a GMAT or an EA we accept both. In terms of preparation, I can talk about it, but to be perfectly honest, I haven't sat either or, so I might hand over either to Caitlin or Susie or Micaela. Anyone who'd like to chat about that? Anyone with any experience?
The only thing
you want to relive it?
Yeah, who wants to? Yeah.
I can just add that I think the GMAT, because I went through this a little, obviously I didn't take the European, but I think the GMAT gives a lot of flexibility. I could use that for a policy school and for the MBA. So it's a bit more kind of generally recognized that you sit it for once and then you have a lot more options of what programs take that
exactly exam. Yeah, and it's valid for 5 years. So you can, a lot of different schools would look for the score, might look at your profile and think, oh, do you have a GMAT score? And it will always add to your overall profile, I think.
And in terms of the EA, I don't know, Susie, have you done the GMAT or the EA?
No, I was going to say I did the EA. It's just a shorter syllabus, so yeah, definitely faster if you're strapped in terms of study time. I would definitely recommend that session you were talking about, Jessica, with Jerry. I think I did one or two of those. Yeah, really, really helpful. Yes, it's so fantastic as well and so accessible. So I would definitely plug those. I think there are you can sign up and get some trial tests online. So I think you get 2 or 3 of those. They are very helpful. I think I might have spent kind of 2 Saturdays, a couple of hours, like good solid chunk studying, and then probably a couple of weekday evenings. Don't think it was anything wild. I think give yourself a bit of a run in, maybe start prepping for it, ideally maybe give yourself maybe 4 or 6 weeks. Now you don't need all that time to study, but just I think you have to book it and get yourself organized and make sure you line up and have done a bit of practice, so then you go to Jerry's session knowing where you're getting stuck. And it's not that difficult.
Exactly. And just to say, at the moment, just due to COVID restrictions, the exam is an online test. So you take it at home on your own computer. There is a proctor. So, it's fine. You can use a little USB whiteboard as well. They don't allow scrap paper, but they do allow you to use that. So, in terms of prep time for the GMAT, it does take more prep time. We have some, for example, if you want to get a certain score, you do need to put in a certain amount of hours. For the EA, as Susie said, some people have said to me, I just, gave it a week. I put a couple of hours in every evening. I bought the official test. I did the test questions. Once I was happy, I went, I booked it. That would be my other advice. Don't wait around. Don't keep doing the test questions or anything. Once you feel comfortable, go in and sit it. For the EA, you can sit it twice. And for the GMAT, you can sit it multiple times if you're not happy with your score the first time round. But as long as you've done a bit of prep and you kind of know what you're going into, it's not designed to be an obstacle. It's really just designed to assess you and make you feel comfortable, so that then when you do join the course and you do hit the ground running, as everyone has been saying, it is intense with, some courses in accountancy and things like that, that you do feel comfortable with the level.
Thanks, Jess. I guess there's some other sort of program and admissions related questions, so we'll try and get through a couple of those now. So the main difference is question here, what is the main difference between the Exec MBA and the Modular MBA? Is it just the days you study? So I guess in terms of the actual course content, is that something, Sophie, you want to take perhaps?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Yeah, essentially that is the main difference. The Executive MBA is offered on a Monday and a Thursday evening for 4 hours each evening. And the Modular MBA, starting for the first time this coming semester, this coming new academic year, is essentially taught on a Friday, Saturday, once a month. However, there would be 4 hours, as I explained in the slide earlier. There would be 4 online hours of teaching, and there would be 4 almost kind of hours in advance as well at the start of term per module. So, but essentially, you can go onto our website, onto smurfitschool.ie, and you will see that for the modular, all of the dates for 2 years are kind of laid out. So there are some additional days, such as leadership development days, I think twice a year. And then there is an optional week-long travel module as well. And of course, there is the Capstone project. But outside of those small exceptions, it's a Friday, Saturday. And, you know, in terms of the course content, very similar modules, but really it's just how they're taught. It's quite a different experience to learn a subject, you know, once a week over 12 weeks versus, you know, in a very intensive kind of Friday, Saturday with some online and some kind of face-to-face teaching. So yeah, in summary, hopefully that answered it.
Thanks. And Sophie, you mentioned the Capstone project. Is that something you can do with your own company, or what is the process around choosing a company to work with?
Yeah, it depends for the Capstone. So it depends on whether you're doing the program full-time or you're doing the Capstone as an Executive MBA student. So Caitlin will know this, but for the full-time students, you're given a selection of projects, and there's a company meet and greet, and that actually only happened, I think it was it last week or this week? Yeah,
last week.
Last week, yeah. So there's a virtual company meet and greet this year, whereby all of the students meet all of the companies, and they have an ability to kind of, you know, as I showed in my slide earlier, there's SMEs, there's corporates, there's, you know, social NGO type projects. There's a variety of projects, and you have an option to kind of state what your preference is. So the module coordinator who manages the Capstone project, she will do her best to accommodate people's preferences. So those projects are presented to the full-time students, and there's a huge variety. It's a little bit different with the Executive MBA. Executive MBA students often bring a project from their company to the module coordinator, and if the project is deemed suitable, you know, you can then work on that project with a group. So it's a bit of a different process, but I suppose the one thing to state is that at all times we try and accommodate people as much as we can. So Micaela, I don't know what your own experience of the Capstone was. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I just add on to that is that I did propose my own Capstone, and I will say at the beginning it was a bit difficult because it was outside the box, and there was an immediate first response like, oh, I'm not sure this is going to work.
Student, of course,
yeah. And so and so I will just note that I appreciated that Smurfit was flexible and being able to, like, as long as I was clear in my goals, then I wasn't trying to sort of circumvent a requirement, but really do something that was going to be most impactful. They figured out how to make it work with me, and Brian Kelly worked with me on it. He was my advisor, and so yeah, and I was able to kind of be flexible because the Kelsey was its own like new social impact startup, but Ashoka Ireland, for those of you who are familiar, incubates and supports social enterprise in Ireland and around the world, and so it was kind of a perfect, you know, just we took a little bit of putting that together, but it turned out that if I was willing to put in the work to structure it, Smurfit was willing to sort of support it and allow it to be possible.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And I definitely think flexibility has been the word of the year. I think we've just had to be, all of us on all sides have had to be very flexible, because no sooner than we make plans, we have to kind of adapt. And, you know, hopefully, you know, that's probably a good example, Micaela, even though you were here pre-pandemic, you know, to show that there's always exceptions, and we're always flexible to accommodate the students as much as we can. I mean, that's ultimately what we're always trying to do. So I'm just
Sophie, that's actually a good, Sophie, I just wanted to come in there because one of the questions that came up was around how people were working mothers. So just to mention the flexibility, you might like to talk about Sharon, who actually had, she had one baby while she was doing the Exec MBA and then breastfed while she did the second year of the MBA. So that was one of the questions that came up quite repeatedly here, was just around mothers and working mothers on the MBA. And Danielle, I think you mentioned you had 3 kids or 4 kids, or just somebody in.
No, I don't think she does.
No, one of the girls in my, who was always in my group, had 3. So she, yeah, they were 1, 3, and 5. So
Just to highlight,
she just managed with a supportive working environment, really, and there were a lot of things to iron out over the course of the 2 years, but overall Smurfit really helped, and her company was very supportive.
Yeah, so just to say, I suppose as well, that we would put you in contact if you were looking to speak to somebody who had completed it as a mother. We would certainly put you in contact.
Absolutely, Elaine. I'm not sure if any of our panelists are parents at the moment. I don't think so, but just to say, we often have working mums, you know, on the program, so we all know them, and I probably just goes back to some of the things Caitlin said. It is really about juggling, and we've had lots of people having kind of children on the program, so like it is manageable. Of course, it makes it a little bit more challenging in some ways, but it's certainly you know, it's normal, inverted commas, you know, it's not uncommon that we would have working parents, working mums on the MBA as well. So,
Sophie, can I just say something on that as well? So from my perspective, as I said, I supervise some Capstone projects and I'm a lecturer on the program as well. And I've seen a lot more of that. Obviously, this year we're all at home as well. But what the girls were saying earlier about groups, the communication within your group, that seems to be the dominant way of getting through things. And, you know, it's parenting for a lot of people. It's not just moms, but there's a lot of dads on the programs as well. And it's the same, some of the same challenges arise for the dads as much as for the moms. And it seems, so I've been involved in, you know, I've been involved in meetings where there has been breastfeeding and there's children on laps and, you know, all the usual working from home stuff that we're seeing with Zoom. So whatever tolerance was there before, I mean, it's all very supportive now, but where it works is communicating within groups. And it seems to be that the busier you are in terms of being a mother and a working mother as well, the time management skills seem to be exceptional. So it seems like another thing to manage, but not overpowering.
Yeah,
Thanks. That's good to hear.
Does that help, Elaine? And
yeah, there was a few questions around just to get it through, because you know, I know that the panelists didn't have kids, but quite a few of them came up, so we just wanted to address that. So thanks, Elaine, Sophie. Thanks, Orla.
Great. Well, look, I don't know, Kathy, I think we probably should finish up at this stage. We're a little bit over time.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really engaging, and thank you for all of your questions. I know, Jess, you're going to maybe share just the contact details if people have further questions that we didn't get to this evening. Jess is available to be contacted and discuss your individual queries that you might have. We'd be delighted to help.
Yeah, just to say, probably the best way to contact, obviously we're still working remotely, so MBA UCD is the main MBA admissions query. If you have any questions, please, you can send it there, and then me or a member of the team will be able to pick it up. And if you do, I mean, I found today really fascinating and really informative as well. If you do have any further questions, if you'd like to be put in touch with an alumni or anything like that, please do just drop me a quick email and I'll organise a call with you, or I'll organise somebody to speak with you.
Yes, so thanks, Jess. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you to the audience for joining us. And, you know, we've had, I can see, really good numbers this evening, and we're delighted. And I suppose that one of the advantages of being virtual is that we can do these events and actually have much higher attendance than if we would have had something on in an evening or a rainy Saturday morning. So that's been thing, and we have to look at the positives here. So thank you. And as when Caitlin, just to reiterate, when Caitlin says she says yes to everything, I can just vouch for that. You do. So thank you for Caitlin for jumping in. Thank you, Susie, so much as well. Micaela for joining us from the States. Thanks, Danielle. Danielle and I were in Helsinki together, and we had to come back quickly from at short notice from Stockholm because of the pandemic. So that was quite dramatic at the time. So thank you so much to all our panelists. Thanks to Dr. Orla Byrne for hosting the panel and for your insights this evening. And of course, finally, thanks to my colleagues in marketing, Adele, Kathy, and in admissions, Jessica, Elaine, and Professor Geraldine Doyle, who's just left us now as well. So thank you all so much. And we do hope you'll consider applying, if you haven't already, to the MBA. And as we said, please do reach out to us for further questions. So on that note, I'm going to say good night. Thank you everyone for this evening, and hopefully see you all soon in person, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice night.